Thanks for tuning into another segment of the Urban Scope podcast. This section, I kind of want to discuss a recent lawsuit that was filed by the St. Lunatics, which we have recently discovered. It's alleged that the other group members didn't want to compile this lawsuit or file this lawsuit. It was just one member of the group. The member is Ali, who was a member of the St. Lunatics since its inception, and it looks like from what the other group members are saying is that he's the only one that wants to file this lawsuit. Recently, they performed at I think it was the AMAs, I believe. All the Lunatics were there except for Ali, which I'll get into, go into discussion about his gripes with. Specifically, he doesn't have a gripe with other members, as he's stated in previous interviews. His most famous interview that Ali did was with Vlad TV. He kind of broke down his grievances and how much he was owed and things like that. So I'll get into the irony of the lawsuit amount and kind of go into some, I don't want to say theories, but some of my beliefs of what I believe happened as far as this lawsuit is going. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment to the videos. The support is gladly appreciated as well. So thanks in advance for that. So I'll kind of get into this lawsuit. So according to a Variety article, initially members of the St. Lunatics were alleging that, well, it's not alleged, they filed a lawsuit. So Murphy Lee, Ali, Keywan, and City Spud all allegedly had filed lawsuits initially for $50 million, alleging copyright infringement over unaccredited and unpaid work on the Country Grammar album, which was Nelly's first album. So the lawsuit alleged that all the members, except for Nelly, of course, were suing Nelly for $50 million for unaccredited work on the Country Grammar album. But until recently, we found out that other members of the group are threatening to sue Ali unless he takes them off of that lawsuit, because they say, hey, we didn't file this lawsuit, and he filed on their behalf, which I didn't know you could do that. I thought you had to have signatures from everyone in the group. But as more details come out, we'll find out more, but it's still early in the process. So it's kind of ironic that this lawsuit is filed $50 million because Nelly, of course, in the summer of last year, he actually sold 50% of his music catalog. So the 8 albums that he has in his catalog, he sold 50% of it for $50 million exactly. And this lawsuit is suing him for $50 million. So basically canceling out everything he sold in that catalog there Ali wants, according to the group members, because they said they're not a part of it, which would make sense because they performed with Nelly just like a week ago at the AMAs. So this lawsuit seems not frivolous, but I want to say it seems a little sketchy as far as the details and who is actually one to file that lawsuit. It seems like Ali is alone on this lawsuit. So, but I'll kind of go into Ali and his history with his gripes with Nelly and what he felt like he didn't get enough credit. So Ali, in an interview with Vlad TV, he expressed his grievances for a lack of credit on Country Grammar. He stated that he worked on songs on the album and was shorted. He said, basically, I thought I was going to get so much money, but I wouldn't get money for weeks or for days, for an extended amount of time. And then I would get a check for $13,000. He said, what is this check for $13,000 for? Because you owe me not like around $91,000 according to his calculations. So he was basically saying I was giving breadcrumbs here and there, and I wasn't getting a set amount of money. I was just getting, just enough money just so I don't quit and just to keep going. But, he had bills to pay. He said he had kids and family he had to support, but he wasn't getting that money. But of course, this is 24 years later. He comes with these allegations. Well, I think the Vlad TV interview actually was prior to 2020 this year, so it probably is a year or two ago. It's not that old. But Murphy Lee kind of had he kind of expressed disappointment in Nelly, but it wasn't about the money per se. Nelly made a comment a while back saying that he felt members of the group were just standing around waiting for him to make money and, give them opportunities, but nobody actually went out and did it. Nobody actually went out and did anything successful, which, Ali did put out a joint album with Gipp, but it didn't chart. It didn't do well. It pretty much flopped. But Murphy Lee did go gold with the album that he did put out, Murphy's Law, and he had the hit single "What the Hook's Gonna Be." Um, and I understand where Ali is coming from on that. He was on the interview with Beehive Atlanta on his show, and like he said, he was just upset about that. He felt like Nelly felt like he wasn't putting enough work in, and uh, he wasn't, and people wasn't dragging their weight. So he felt like he was different. To me, he was the most lyrical person in that group. And I grew up listening to the Saint Lunatics and uh, Nelly. One of the things I look for in artists is if they're from a region, make me feel like I'm from that area. And when, the St. Lunatics came out, I always felt like I was from St. Louis. So I had been there. I had never been there to that point, but they gave you a vibe that you felt like, oh, okay, this is what St. Louis is like. Like kind of like when you heard Juicy from Biggie, or you heard California Love from Tupac, things like that. Or you heard like Lil Wayne, I mean, not Lil Wayne, but Cash Money and No Limit. They made you feel like you from New Orleans or had been there or know exactly what it is. So, just a side note that kind of, made me like the St. Lunatics a lot. But he was the most success. Murphy Lee was the most successful St. Lunatic other than Nelly. Most people know Nelly, and they know, and if anybody know anybody else in the group, they're gonna know Murphy Lee because, like I said, he had the song with Jermaine Dupri. It was a big hit song. He also had the song on the Bad Boys soundtrack, um, "Shake Your Tail Feather." So he had a couple hits out there that stood alone from the Saint Lunatics, and Nelly was on the "Shake Your Tail Feather" song, but he was a standout, and he had the Atlanta "Welcome to Atlanta" remix. He was on there by himself. So Nelly kind of talked about uh, these things as well. He said, I was giving people opportunities, but they didn't take it. But he did give Murphy Lee credit because he said he couldn't be on the "Welcome to Atlanta" remix, but he asked Murphy Lee to do it. Murphy Lee did it, and he was very integral in that song. Even though it's "Welcome to Atlanta," he's from St. Louis, but it had regional artists from all over the place. But like I said, I think Murphy Lee did the best he could with what he had. It's very difficult to be a star. We all know Nelly had that star power. So it's very difficult to stand out on your own other than a group. Like I said, a lot of artists have done it. Not many have been successful at it. Like I said, usually in a group it's only going to be one star. You're going to have your Sway Lee, and Ray Shrimmer. You're going to have your, Kid from Kid and Play. You're going to have these people, but you're not going to have it's very rare that a group breaks up and there's multiple people being successful. Other than Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang had, pretty much all of their group members were pretty much successful, whether it be acting or, um, acting or rapping or whatever they was doing on the side. It's rare that you find that though. So I found it kind of interesting. Like I said, Nelly's side of the story is a little bit different than other groups. Of course, like I said, it's always three sides. It's Nelly's side, it's the group side, and then it's the middle. But now it's seeming like it's just the group side, Nelly's side, and Ali's side. Like the group, other than Ali, it doesn't appear that they have any malice towards Nelly, but it seems like there's a gripe between Nelly and Ali that maybe they have a bond that goes back, and maybe there was something promised back then that we don't know about, but it'll eventually, the story will come out as it unfolds. But Nelly was always saying that, I think he was on the Creative Friends podcast when he talked about the allegations that Ali set forth. And he said these things, and this was about 3 years ago. So he said that he was offered a solo deal, but refused to sign the deal because he wanted to get his group signed. So he said that he's been a team player from day one. He said he put the work in, and that, the group, they weren't successful, unfortunately, but like I said, he did his part. And so he said he refused to sign a deal. He was offered the deal several times, but he said, hey, can you put my group on? And eventually they succumbed to his demands. And he said that in his contract, he had written in his contract that if the Country Grammar album, which was his solo album, solo debut album, if it sold more than 250,000 copies, which back then wasn't really a lot, because like I said, everybody was going gold and platinum back then. But if it sold more than 250,000, that every member in the group had options for solo deals. And of course, the only person that really had a solo deal that ended up doing anything with it was Murphy Lee, which that, like I said before, that album went gold. So, Nelly said, he had to pay all the fees. He had to pay all the studio time. He had to pay all the bills. He had to pay the label office. He said the Dirty ENT building, which was his label, his imprint, he had to pay for everything with the label, and the group just got their money and just went along. He said everybody else understood that, like, so he was the boss essentially. So he said I had to pay for all the expenses, and whatever came out of expenses, I got that money, and I had to split it with the group. So the group didn't understand that all the studio time. He said he paid for it. He said everyone's family were using the studios and using the equipment and everything, and he still did it for free. He didn't charge anybody. He said, Murphy Lee's wife uh, put out music and put out great music, and he didn't charge or anything. And he was talking about everybody in the group, how they just got their money and got away. But he had to do the studio time, and he had to do the appearances, and he had to be available for all these different platforms. So group members just got their money and went home to their families, and just waited to reload them the money. He said, but all the bills he had to pay, a lot of bills like the touring and the buses. He said the label really wasn't supporting him like that. He was putting that money up, and whatever he got back on the back end, he took a large chunk because he paid for the expenses, which kind of like the Joe Budden podcast he was talking about. He said, when he had the first group of people, he had to put out all this money, and for like the cameras and for all the promotions and stuff like that, and everybody else just showed up to work. He was saying, but it's more to it when you're a boss. You have to pay the expenses, and I think people just have to know the business a little bit better. But Nelly also said that they were in a deal before, and they were in a, well, let me rewind a little bit more. And also he said with the touring expenses, people requested only him on the billing, but he put his team there because, like I said, he had songs with his team that he wants to perform with them. And also he was being a loyal friend, because he said, I grew up with these guys. If you want me, you want Nelly, you want St. Lunatics. So he said, every time they would just give him one flat rate, he would have to split it with the group. So that was cutting into his money. So he did that, for the group. And then I'll kind of get into another money issue in another segment, but regarding Ice Cube and Chris Tucker in one of my next sections. But as far as this section goes, he also talked about the publishing for that. So they were in a deal before. They had a song called "Give Me What You Got," and they were signed to a label, I believe it's called D2. And he said that he bought his publishing right out for $75,000. He said he got his first major deal, and he went to the label, and they were like, "You're in a deal?" He was like, "Yeah, $75,000." He's freaking out about it, thinking the label ain't gonna want to touch him. And they were like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, we'll take care of it." And he kind of laughed about it, because he said the label was, man, 75,000. We're gonna make millions off Nelly, and this 75,000 is gonna be a drop in the bucket, which it turned out to be. He became very successful and very profitable, and a businessman himself. So he said the group never paid for their rights, so a lot of their publishing, which artists get paid off of, went to the label, the D2 label, which I don't know if it's still a label now. Somebody probably bought it out or something. I couldn't find much on it. But he said that's where most of their money was lost from. So I think Ali just didn't know the business of the deal. And like I said, he was the first person in the group with a deal before they even made a group. He was saying, he read the book, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. So they was following his lead on a lot of stuff. But Nelly said, Ali was the leader of the group at first, but then Nelly took over. And when Nelly took over, they got a deal in a couple of months. But when Ali had the group, they were, dealers for years. So Nelly said, I got a lot done in a short amount of time compared to what Ali was doing. So I think it's just an issue between Ali and Nelly, and I think it's mostly an Ali issue, because, like I said, he felt he was owed something more than obviously the other group members are alleging. So I feel like it's just something they have to work out, and hopefully they can figure it out, because, like I said, that group is one of our top hip hop groups of all time. And I really think, despite them only having one album, but Nelly had a bunch of solo albums with them on it. And like you said, he always gave him credit for saying they contributed to Nelly, his Country Grammar album, and they were pivotal in his growth as an artist. So it's not like he didn't give him credit for it and didn't say they didn't help. He said they helped, but Ali is obviously looking for something more, and that more seems financial. So tell me, what do you think about the issues with Ali and the group and the whole mess of the lawsuit being filed, but everybody on the lawsuit didn't want to be named in that lawsuit? So tell me what you think about that, and I'll see you next time.